Good morning, Barry Bryson. Thanking you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. And today we are finishing up 1 Peter as part of our continuing study of the life and letters of the Apostle Peter. We're going to be reading the last 3 verses today of 1 Peter. 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 12 through 14. So much detail in these verses. And we read these passages, these hellos and goodbyes, and we read right over them thinking that they're perfunctory, and they're not. They're not. They contain so much theology, and they contain so much detail that helps us to really piece together what was going on. Through Silvanus, our faithful brother, for so I regard him, I have written to you briefly, exhorting and testifying that this is the true grace of God. Stand firm in it. She who is in Babylon, chosen together with you, sends you greetings, and so does my son Mark. Greet one another with a kiss of love. Peace be to you all who are in Christ. Every word is important, and there's so many details here. What do we notice first? Silvanus. Silvanus. We know that name already. In fact, Paul writes about him. In fact, Silvanus is the longer form of the name Silas. Silvanus is Silas. And then we also have the name of Mark. Silvanus, Silas, and Mark. Who do Silas and Mark work with throughout their ministry? They work with Paul. Paul and Silas are in the Philippian jail together. Mark joins Barnabas and Paul on their first missionary journey, leaves before it's over. It causes Paul and Barnabas really to part ways when they start their second missionary journey, but by the end, a time contemporary really with the writing of this, Timothy says, or Paul says to Timothy, that he needs Mark to come to be with him because he is profitable for his ministry. Bring Mark. So there not only has been a reconciliation between Paul and Mark, but Mark has earned his bars. He's earned his stripes with the Apostle Paul. Paul says, I need him here. Well, evidently Timothy came. We know Timothy came because at the end of the book of Hebrews, he's in Rome and he's just gotten out of jail. And he's brought Mark with him. So we read this and we know how the request that Paul has made in 2 Timothy turn out. So we also know that at the end, after Paul is dead, Paul must be already dead because Paul's staff, Paul's guys, are working with Peter and they're serving Peter. Silas is the amanuensis. He's the guy, the secretary that has written this all down. Maybe Peter was in actual deep, dark prison and was getting notes out to Silas, or maybe Silas was allowed to visit and he was writing it down as Peter spoke at. And Mark is there, and he calls Mark his son. It shouldn't be surprising that Peter and Mark would have a close relationship because Peter and Barnabas knew each other before Paul and Barnabas did, and Mark is there living in Jerusalem and seems to have been an apostle of Jesus from the very early days, or a disciple, I should say, not an apostle of Jesus. They're from Babylon. Why does he say Babylon when he doesn't mean Babylon? He's in Rome. Is that code because he's afraid it's going to be read? Maybe, but he's already in jail, so maybe they already know that. Is it an accusation? Is it a comparison of Rome with Babylon as the place where God's people are being held captive or are being mistreated? Maybe. Is there a deeper theological meaning? That after this is over, there will be a return or something. I don't know, but Babylon is an important phrase. We've used the word Babylon to describe Sin City even to this day. Even to this day, sometimes Hollywood will be referred to as Babylon. So all of those things might be true. He says he's written briefly, and he's saying this is the true grace of God. What is this? This experience that we're undergoing as we're being persecuted, or this? Does he mean this that I have written to you, or does he mean it all? I think he means it all. This is the true grace of God. And then greet one another with a kiss of love. We don't understand in our culture how important that was People don't usually just kiss each other when they see each other who have been born and raised in this country unless they're on a talk show. Okay? But they did. There was a very strictly defined code of whom you kissed and how you kissed. And the subservient, submissive person always kissed the person in power. And so if you were the kisser, you were establishing yourself as less than the person whom you were kissing, either on the neck or the back of the jaw or on the hand. You were establishing the social pecking order. It's almost like dogs sniffing each other, okay? It was a way in greeting to establish who was the dominant. But in the church, both Peter and Paul say, kiss each other. You kiss each other. Everybody's equal. Everybody loves each other. Everyone is family. Everyone's a brother and sister. No one stands above anyone else. Greet one another with a kiss of love. And then that word peace, which is comes as a greeting not from the Greek but the Hebrew, shalom. And shalom, peace, does not mean, it didn't mean for them, and it really doesn't yet mean in Hebrew what we associate the word peace with, which means the absence of conflict. The word peace means more properly equilibrium, means that things are in balance, in right relationship, that I'm right with God and I'm right with my fellow man. Now, even though my life might be in equilibrium and balance, it doesn't mean someone else's might not be. And they might not make my life difficult because of the imbalance in their own lives. But that imbalance and that difficulty, that persecution they might direct at me does not have to upset my balance, my right relationship with God and with others. That solely depends on me and what's in my heart and the way I act. So much in those 3 verses. Well, we're going to move on to 2 Peter, which was written later and which looks forward to beyond Peter's death to the next challenge the church will face. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.